Welcome back to another Growing in Grace podcast. I mean, God bless you. We're glad to have you back with us again on the Growing in Grace podcast. We're glad to have you, your family, your friends. We would like to have you like, share, and subscribe to this podcast, Growing in Grace. If you have concerns or questions or topics you would like to have us discuss, please email me at ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. Today we have a special guest with us, Melveenia Clark.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And she's going to talk with us about gun violence in the black community.
Yes.
And we know that we have a situation where there's hatred, envy, strife in the world today.
Correct.
And gun violence is really all over the world.
Yes.
And we have statistics for gun violence in the world, but there's certain statistics for the black community that's different from other communities.
Correct.
And so today we just want to talk some with Melveenia Clark about gun violence in the black community. And we'll start with, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
My name is Melveenia Clark, and I am a mother, a sister, and a daughter of gun violence victims. So when those things happen, I always tell people I was given a special assignment, and I just took to the ground as boots on the ground to help find solutions and not just bring about and want to inflict the same hurt and pain that was handed to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was given, a vision on a foundation, which was it was named after my son, to help teens and young adults combat gun violence and find solutions and other alternatives.
I see.
Yes.
Named after your son.
Yes. Yes.
What's your son's name?
His name was Shaquille Clark.
Shaquille Clark. I see.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so you've kind of witnessed it in your family.
Yes, I have.
And,
Witnessed it in my family. I have, and I tell people this all the time, I witness it on both sides of the fence. So I lost my mother, my son, my oldest son, my sister, aunt, and a grandmother behind gun violence. And so I then also, 2 years later, lost two of my sons to incarceration on a charge of dealing with guns.
I see.
And so I had to deal with it from both sides
On
of the
both
fence.
sides,
Mm-hmm.
both sides. So
Yes.
the offense and the offender.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
I see. So which side would you like to talk about first?
We can talk about the victim side first.
Okay.
Since that happened first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about becoming a victim of gun violence.
In 2015, my sister was brutally murdered by her husband to domestic gun violence. As a result of that, my mother, when she had to identify my sister's body, she passed away of a broken heart. So in December of 2015, I had to have a double funeral for my mom and my sister, which was that community's first double funeral since years and years and years, decades. So it was a challenge. And then shortly after, I lost my grandmother, and then my aunt. She died of a broken heart behind the loss of, my mom and my sister. And then in March, I wasn't ready for what was yet to happen. My oldest son was at my sister's house, and I know people don't like when you say these words, but I lost my son to black on black crime. And he was at my sister's house, and two of her two older daughter baby fathers took my son down the street and murdered him behind something that my cousin had did prior. So, yeah, and then shortly after that, my best friend, and it was back to back. It was like 6 months period, month after month. I lost 6 people, and so my best friend, she caught her boyfriend cheating, and he threw her down the steps, broke her neck, and then shot and killed her. Left the baby crawling in her blood, and that was a rough year for me. It was a challenging year, and that was just the beginning of what yet I really call an assignment. Because most people, I think, having to deal with something like that wouldn't have been able to handle it. And if it wasn't for the grace of God,
Yes.
I probably wouldn't have been able to handle it either.
Yeah.
And that's my truth.
Yeah. So where's this community?
This was in Beckley, West Virginia. This happened all in Beckley, West Virginia. At the time, I was living here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was battling bone cancer.
I see.
And so it was a journey for me. It was a journey for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
living in Atlanta, all these things were happening in West Virginia.
Yes, Beckley, West Virginia.
Beckley, West Virginia.
Yes.
And so were these that the gun violence, was there anybody that held responsible for the violence? Was anybody incarcerated for the violence?
Yes. So my sister's husband, he is currently serving life sentencing for my sister and my mother's death. And then there is one young man. He was the only one that went to jail behind murdering my son. There were a total of 6 that were responsible for it. And the rest of them, they ended up killing each other because they were paid to murder my son. And so it was a big thing over money, and they ended up killing each other. And then there was only one young man that went to jail, and that right there, that's an assignment for the one person that was held accountable.
So,
yeah.
As you describe this, sometimes I think people don't see the big picture, that it actually doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. Not at all.
It doesn't make sense. And I think about the scripture in Hosea where it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
So, okay. Somebody gets paid to kill somebody.
Yes.
How does that end well for you if you get paid to kill somebody? See, you understand where I'm coming from?
I do, yes.
How does that end well for you?
It doesn't.
It doesn't sound like that's going to end well.
It doesn't, because the money's going to, eventually the money's going to run out. Whatever you buy is going to get old. So what do you gain from it?
What do you gain from it? And if you gained everything and you lost your soul, what's the profit in that? What is the profit in that? So you say that several of these that were involved in that ended up killing themselves.
Yes.
And the one that's living is in jail.
Yes. And he just currently, he got out almost a year ago.
I see.
And didn't just get out on his own. He was given manslaughter and was given 2 years. Ended up serving 5 because of his behavior behind bars. And I share my story because in the process, I held on to a lot of things. And it caused a lot of dis-ease in my body. I ended up having cancer for a second time, which was thyroid cancer, an aggressive form of thyroid cancer. And behind that, getting that taken care of, I ended up having a stroke. And I was sitting in my hospital bed and just had the surgery to remove the cancer, ended up having a stroke, and I get a call from the parole board. And at the time, I had no voice. And I had, there was a pastor and a few people that were there with me, and they told me they would be calling the next day. And I really felt some type of way when they were asking me, what did I want to see what happened to that young man. And in that moment, I had to take a lot of time with God. I
Mm-hmm.
really had to spend a lot of time with God. I had to take my emotions and feelings out of it, and I had to think about it like, if we're going to fix this problem, how do we fix it?
Mm-hmm.
You can't ask for a life for a life,
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to consult with God, and God waited on my heart to ask for his release
Mm-hmm.
and to forgive. And the forgiveness wasn't for him.
Mm-hmm.
The forgiveness was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why, because sitting on that bed and the next day when that phone rang, nobody was in the room. And when I thought I didn't have a voice,
Mm-hmm.
when it was time, God let that voice work like no other.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to get on that call and ask for his release. And not only that, I had prior to that, that morning, got up and made some phone calls and sent some emails and asked for someone that lives in North Carolina, because I didn't want him to go back to the community where my family lived, and I have grandchildren there.
Yes.
And so I asked if he could be paroled to North Carolina, and I asked one of the people that I know that has a nonprofit there if they could help him start a trucking company
Mm-hmm.
and get his CDL license.
Mm-hmm.
Because what people don't understand is if we don't provide solutions also for the offenders, then we're going to continue to receive the same thing that they done before they went in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't just care for the victims. You also show love to the offenders, because at some point in their life they were missing love. They lacked love. They didn't know what that looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And so after you've taken my child's life, to be able to still love all over this young man
Mm-hmm.
and want the best for him,
Mm-hmm.
that was a solution for me. And
Mm-hmm.
not only a solution, but it was in the Bible. We
Mm-hmm.
have to forgive.
Yes.
We have to treat our neighbor as we want to be treated.
Yes, and sometimes we have to treat them better.
Yes.
And that's one of the things I've been trying to motivate in some of the people that I'm teaching now.
Yes.
It's funny to meet you today. I'm just meeting you today, and so some of the things I've been trying to motivate in others,
Wow.
it seems like it's already motivated in you.
Yes. Yes.
So sometimes you just got to treat other people better
Better than what
than
they
they treat you.
Yes.
Because sometimes people don't treat you well.
That's correct.
That doesn't mean you treat them the same way that they've treated you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Somebody's got to break the cycle.
That's right.
And it seems as though oftentimes people want to keep a cycle going.
Yes, they do.
They want real for real, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
Correct.
But where does the foolishness end?
Yes.
And so somebody's got to have some sense to end the foolishness.
In the foolishness. That's right. Yes. Yeah. And I took a lot of stands, and I can say what motivated me was in that moment when I had to ask for this young man's release. I just asked God. I said, God, if I walk in obedience, I prayed for certain things, and here I was laying in the bed, couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't move my whole right side of my body. Wearing diapers. I'm not ashamed to say it, but let me tell you, in the process, after I let go and let God, my healing came about. And people don't understand that I was in a wheelchair for a little while, but I began to walk again, talk again. I don't have a limp like some people who have had a stroke. Some people have lost their voice, but I have a voice.
Yeah.
And I believe that God gave me this voice to tell this story. And another thing that people don't understand is our Black communities have suffered so much with, if this happened, you can't tell anybody. And that stuff has embedded mental health, trauma, childhood trauma that we don't address even as adults. And I tell people all the time, the ruin of our communities start in our homes. And they look at me like I'm crazy when I say that, but I'm telling the truth, because some things that we don't want to talk about, that we don't want to address, it starts right there in the home. And if we got parents not addressing it with their children and talking to their children about gun violence, gun control, what it does to you, or just having a simple conversation trying to understand what your child is going through and how to help them get through it, alongside just not choosing violence, but choosing another alternative to finding a peaceful resolution.
Yes. Well, like you said part of the problem sometimes starts in the home. And I would say that the solution is in the home as well.
Yes, it is.
It's not, well, part of it is.
Yes.
It's not necessarily in the legislation.
That's
It's
correct.
more in the heart and in the home.
Home. That's it.
And the thing is, oftentimes we have a situation where the proper things were not put into the hearts of our children.
That is correct.
And the Bible even says, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many will wax cold.
That's correct.
And one of the reasons why people are able to commit these acts of violence is because their heart is cold.
Cold. Yes.
And they have a heart issue.
That's it.
And oftentimes, I'm not anti new legislation for gun control. I'm not anti.
Okay.
However, I think that the real control has to be in the heart.
That's correct.
Because oftentimes, and you probably know this because you've been on the circuit, you've been advocating.
Yes.
But oftentimes, the people who perpetrate gun violence, they've already broken the law.
That's correct.
So if you make a new law, you understand where I'm
I
coming
do.
from.
I get you. Yes.
All you're doing, if that would solve the problem,
Yes.
I don't mean to be controversial about that
Yes.
either, but if that would solve the problem, okay, let's get some more
Yes.
gun control laws.
Yes, that's right.
However,
It's not
I
it.
think more of the issue is the issue of the heart
Matters of the
rather
heart.
than the law that people are willing to break.
That's correct. Yes. That is so true. And I tell people, I always tell people when they ask me what do I think the solutions are, I always tell them it's the mindset and it's the matters of the heart.
Yeah.
And when I say these things, they look at me like, well, you don't know what you're talking. Yes, I do. I mean, because I've dealt with it on both sides of the fence. And like I said, I had to deal with the matters of the heart in order for me to walk this walk that I'm walking, to have love and caring and compassion for the same people that took my family's life.
Yes.
And it's a mindset thing also, you know. Like I said, I had to put down the ill will thoughts and the plots and everything, and I literally had to pick up a Bible.
Wait a minute. I heard
did.
you. I heard what you just said. The
Yes.
plots.
Yes.
What's up with the plots?
I wanted to go back and bring harm to those that brought harm to me. But then when I thought about
Yeah.
it didn't make sense.
Right.
Because it's all it's going to continue to do is create a cycle
Yes.
of other broken hearts, other hurt people, other lives lost. And where are we going with this? Nowhere.
Right.
Eventually, we're going to wipe out our culture.
Yes.
So at some point, you know, somebody had to say, hey, and I am so glad that God dealt with my matters in my heart and put me in that direction to be an advocate, to be a voice, to allow me to still have my voice,
Yes.
to be able to speak to people and help them understand. And I always tell them all the time, you know, I've encountered so many situations where just like a lady, you know, not to veer off, but she hit my car and was calling me out my name. But I had to sit and I heard the small, still voice said, keep your mouth shut, stay on your throne and knowing who you are. And it was hard, but because I did that, the next day when I seen this lady, she took responsibility. And she asked me the question, I was so mean to you. Why did you still be nice to me? I said, I had to tell her, our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against the principalities. And so if I project on you what you project on me, where are we going?
Yeah.
What's gonna come out of this? Nothing but more hurt people, a worse situation, and no resolution. And so I had to think about it. What would I want done to me in that situation? And I treated her the same way that I would want somebody to treat me.
Yes. And this is where I think people will really benefit if they could really keep their mind about them and their wits about them.
Yes.
Okay, how would I want to be treated in it? Sometimes you're right in the midst of
Yes.
a situation, but okay, what's the golden rule?
Yes.
I mean, what did I learn when I was in
Yes.
in the elementary school? And here's the problem. Here's the thing about that. I sense, because I keep talking about it.
Yes.
Matthew 7:12, whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do even so to them.
That's
I keep
correct.
talking about it, and I sense sometimes that some of the seasoned people, it's like, that's kind of elementary. But
Yeah.
here's the problem.
Uh-oh.
People have not gotten it.
They have not.
They have graduated in age, but they still haven't learned that principal primary lesson
Ooh.
whatsoever.
Yep.
You've been around a while.
I have.
Yeah, not
I
to say you.
have.
Oh, I don't know how old you are. We ain't talking about that.
Yeah.
But you've been around to experience some things.
That's correct.
Am I correct in saying that you meet a
You.
lot of people who are
Yes.
supposed to know
Yes.
who are not doing Matthew 7 and 12?
That is correct. There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yes, and it sometimes it's hurtful because I look and I've even I encountered a pastor who he was very much upset. A little small situation happened, and he was like, "Oh, I know the Lord," and I was like, "But that's not how you're supposed to teach us." And I was just saying to him, I was like, "We got to deal with the matters of the heart," and he was like, "I'm glad you was here to remind me," and it was so we have to help others, remind them of those things, encourage them to say, "Hey, you never know what somebody else is going through," so.
Here's another thing. Like you did get an illustration of the person that hit you and how that happened, how you were able to manage your emotions and
Yes.
keep your composure, and then what that person did the following day. There's something about when you treat people right, and there's another thing is sometimes the person that's treating you wrong, maybe it's not them. Maybe it's something in them that's going on wrong.
Wrong. Yes.
If you understand,
Yes.
whereas Jesus said this when he was going to the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do.
Yes.
Because sometimes a person is doing the wrong thing,
Yes.
and a horrible thing,
Correct.
but it's not necessarily altogether them.
Yes. That is correct. Yes.
Because you do, and I think you even said this, how that, and the scripture says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood,
Yes.
but against principalities. Well, the reality is sometimes that other guy, the devil, is operating in that person. And so you shouldn't hate that person. It's
Correct.
what's in that person that needs to come out.
That's it.
Not the person.
That's right.
So sometimes we take things personal.
Yes.
But it's really,
It
and so it's not to wrestle with that person,
Yes.
but it's what's in that
What's
person
in
that needs
that
to be
person.
wrestled with.
Yes, and if I can say this, that lady, that particular lady, she shared with me that next day that she was dealing with something, and she had tried. She was contemplating suicide, and she was on her way back to the location where I was at parked, and I was parked in the parking space, not moving, just parked in the parking space. And she said she was trying to get back once she realized what she had done, and she said her biggest thing was, Jesus, God, if you're real, save me. And she said she just headed back in that direction to park her car. Now, there were so many people out there. There were other people and there were other cars. But in the process, she only hit my car. And the next day, so I'm going to skip forward. The next day, when I seen her, she began to share this testimony with me and said that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer in both her breasts. And they were telling her they were going to have to take both of her breasts off. And so she said she just tried to take some pills and kill herself. But when she came through, that's when she made her way back. But to make a long story short, I was able to share my testimony of my journey. And she said, why did you treat me like that? I said, I could understand and I could see that you were going through something. And so when she told me that story, I shared my story, and it brought her into tears. And the very next day was Sunday. I hadn't been to church because I had been going back and forth for my treatments, and she asked me, where do you go to church at? I said, I haven't been to church. And so she was like, do you think you could take me to church? And I'm looking like, and I had to wrestle a little bit. Now, God, why you keep sending this lady after she get my car? And then she didn't take responsibility. And I heard the Lord say, take her. And I took her over there to a church. I Googled a church, and it was one across the street right there on Davidson Parkway. Me and her went to church, and she went in there, and she got saved. And she said, I've been running from God, but the way he had to catch me, it has changed my life, my heart, my mind. She just started saying it, and I just got up and I walked out. Because at that point, I knew that I was on an assignment. And I know people, they get tired of hearing me say this, but when you can see the hand of God in it, and somebody's heart, mind, life, and everything is forever changed, What can you do but praise God?
Yeah.
And that was the whole solution, the change of the mind and the change of the heart.
Yeah.
And that was through my obedience, being obedient, staying on my throne and knowing who I was in God and controlling my emotions and the matters of my own heart
Yeah.
and extending grace, the same
Yes.
grace I was asking God for me for.
Yes. Yes. Now, this young man who perpetrated violence on your family.
Yes.
Um, what happened?
Ah,
So you advocated for parole for him,
I did.
and to get him to go to North Carolina,
Yes.
away from West Virginia, where your family is.
Correct.
You wanted him parole, but you didn't want him around your family.
That is correct.
Okay, so you wanted him to have an opportunity,
I did.
and so tell us how that worked out.
Well, I have to tell the truth. He got out. He participated a little bit, but then he made his way back to West Virginia and murdered my cousin's son. Yes, made his way back to West Virginia, murdered my cousin's son, and currently is not being held responsible for it.
So he's out.
He's out, still roaming
Still
the
out.
street. Yes, yes,
And committed another murder.
and committed another murder.
This is known.
Yes, yes, you can look it up. Yes, I have been praying and praying and praying for this young man, for his family, and I honestly just I don't have the answer. I just know it's within my heart to continue to pray for him, and I know a lot of my family members are not happy with it. But in the process, it has been changing them to see that I continue to pray and I continue to walk right with God in lieu of praying that one day that this young man will turn his life around. And I tell people, I just feel that God's going to use him to save a lot of people. And we look at everything as bad, but at some point, there's going to be a turnaround because I'm a believer, a strong believer. And I'm praying for his heart. I'm praying for his mind. Praying that God will touch his heart and his mind and use him in a mighty way to be a solution for so many other young men. Yes.
There's no contact with him.
No, I've reached out to him several times, reached out to his mom. They refused to, reach back out. But hey, what can I do but continue to pray, keep my heart and mind in line with God.
Yeah. Well, the fact is that you can't control other people's actions
You cannot.
on what they do,
Yes,
but you should have some temperance and control of yourself.
that's correct.
And because at the end of the day, everybody's going to be held accountable
For their
before
actions.
God.
That's correct.
Before God.
Yes.
So that's good that you have your heart toward God,
Yes.
even toward your enemy.
Correct.
And
Yes.
actually, that's something that people need to remember and revisit.
Yes.
That the Lord did actually say, He said, see now, sometimes I think people just want to live in the Old Testament,
Yeah.
and pick up a sword,
Yeah.
and go handle their
That's not
business,
the way.
and go destroy all the enemy.
Yeah.
But in the New Testament, Jesus, He brought a way where we actually forgive and love.
Yes.
Now, I do want to say that because you forgive and love your enemy, that doesn't necessarily mean you should trust your enemy.
No way, no how.
Yeah, because sometimes people don't disassociate the two.
Yes.
And think that forgiveness equals trust, and
No.
they're not the same thing.
Not at all.
You can forgive a person but not
Yes,
trust them.
not trust them again.
I
Yeah.
can forgive a person for stealing my $100.
Yeah.
But that don't mean I have to lay $100 down in front
Again.
of them.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
those are two different things.
That's correct.
But it is good to walk in forgiveness and love your enemies.
It is.
And that's where some people, they have lost their way.
Yes.
Because they want to retaliate and get revenge.
No.
And this is what continues the gun violence in our communities.
It is.
So there is a situation where one of the family members have been shot, then the family members of the gunshot victim gets together and they're gonna create a little posse. Now they
Yeah.
go out and they're gonna shoot, and almost like eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Yes.
But when you think of it, if you're in a situation where just an illustration, you knock one of my teeth out, then I have to knock one of yours out. But I hit you so hard that I knocked two.
Uh-oh.
Now, now you owe me one. Now you got to knock one of mine, but you hit me so hard that you knocked three.
It's going to keep on and keep
And next
on
thing you
till
know, we don't have,
nothing.
we're toothless.
Yes, nothing.
And so it's a bad, vicious cycle.
It is.
And somebody has to have enough sense to know, you know what, we've already lost so much.
Yes.
Let's not lose anymore.
That's correct.
Let's not
Yes.
lose anymore. And the best thing is forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Not necessarily trust,
Yep.
but forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Yes. And I tell people all the time, they're like, well, how can you forgive? Honestly, and I'm just being honest, the forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, that's how I've healed so much. A lot of the dis-ease that was in my body, from heart failure to all those things, and those things are turning around. Not only that, them watching my life, that whole entire community, my family, none of them retaliated. And they continue daily to look at my life and like, I don't know how. I said, I had to find me a relationship with God. Change that heart and that mind. That's all I can tell is the truth. And then if you walk right and you do right, those very people that are looking, that are lost, they can find their way. Because guess what they're going to want to do? Just as well as they want to do the bad, they're going to want to find out what you're doing to walk the way that you're walking. And that's when you have to stay on that throne. Is it tough? Yes, it is sometimes, because things come up and I really have to call on the name. I have to call on the name and I have to sit back and say, God, the same grace that I'm asking you for, I need you to give me that strength to extend this same grace. And I know that there was a whole community, my family, I had other young men, I had other sons, and I had to be that voice and tell them, hey, this is not what we're going to do.
Yes.
We're not going to retaliate. And anybody that does, there's consequences for your action.
Yes.
Not just here on earth. But baby, there's a day that you have to hit those gates. And that's exactly how I talk to them. And I tell them every day, that's my life story. I live by the word of God.
Yeah. And the thing of it is one gentleman or one person kills one in the community. And then if that person is held accountable, that's actually two taken out of the community.
Two out of the community. Yes.
One is incarcerated and one is in the grave.
Yes.
And it's a bad cycle. So what do you get out of that once you take that other person's life and then you're held accountable for it, and now you have to spend those years behind bars?
Yes.
So you're losing.
You're losing.
It's a lose-lose.
Yes.
It's a lose-lose.
Suffering. Bringing suffering on your own self.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Bringing about so many other things. Yeah.
So what are some of the solutions that you're advocating for?
Well, I know I'm really big on this and people don't understand, but I'm really big on family. I'm really big on that family, that quality time, because I think those are the things that we don't do in our homes now.
Yes.
Is have those conversations, build those strong love bonds with each other. We don't talk to our children enough in this day and time to have them comfortable enough to tell when they're going through something or when they're being bullied and how to handle it. We also, we got to work on the parents too. We have to work on the parents. And I tell people, I always say this because my grandmother told me this. The hospital is the church. When you hurting, go there. Fellowship. Get to know people that can pray for you, pray with you, teach you how to handle things in the way that we're supposed to, Right. And I feel like that's the only way. We can't take all the guns off the streets, but if you can change the matters of the heart and the mind,
Yes.
you can do a more cleanup than anything.
Yes.
And people don't get that. And I tell them, they think I'm crazy when I say it. You can change all the laws you want. You can take all the guns and not everything off the street. But guess what? If you don't change the inner person,
Yeah.
you're going to get the same results.
Yeah, well, even the first murder, they didn't have a gun. The guy he picked up, that was Cain, who slew Abel.
Yes,
He used a stone.
that's correct.
And I know that some of the guns, though, they have more capacity and they can do more damage in a shorter period of time. I'm not naive to that.
Yes.
At the same time, if the hearts of men were right, we can have guns all laying everywhere.
Everywhere.
And no one would pick up one
Not
and
at
use
all.
it against a
That's
fellow
right.
human being.
Yes.
No one would do it.
That's correct.
In fact, the way the scripture reads is like, love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Therefore, the love is the fulfilling of the law.
That's correct.
In fact, if we have love appropriately,
That's correct.
you don't need a law that says thou shalt not kill.
That's right.
All you need is love.
Love. That's all we need.
All you need is love, because I can't do that to you if I love you.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. And some people don't even know how to love themselves.
Exactly.
And we blame internal issues on outside entities. And when it's all an internal thing, not loving yourself. Because I believe that if a lot of people rightfully knew how to love themselves, and that's just caring for yourself, as the Bible said, doing unto others as you want them to do unto you.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you loved yourself enough to not want hurt and harm brought to you, you ain't going to bring it to the next man.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And there is a statistics about fathers, homes without fathers.
Correct.
And I am I broke the barrier of that statistic. I was raised by my mother, but like you were saying about the church, the gospel, the church, in fact, this church that we're in right here now, I was brought up here.
Wow.
I was a little baby here.
Wow.
I was a little
That's
baby
amazing.
here.
That is good.
And so I was brought up here, and some of the things that I might not have gotten at home, I got it at church.
That's it.
But here's the thing. I was actually on my way to being a violent person. I actually was a violent person, and I just didn't get into the gun violence.
Wow.
I was violent with my brother, my sister. I cut my brother, and I was really on my way to a bad place.
Yeah.
I really was.
Wow.
And some people who know me now who didn't know me then, they can't even believe that I was ever that other person.
I would never thought that.
But I was this other person at one
Yeah.
time. But fathers play a great role
Yes.
in having the family to be what it's supposed to be.
That's right.
There's a scripture in Ephesians 6:4 that says, "And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord."
Yes.
And if we can bring these homes back together,
Yes.
and have fathers raising their sons and daughters,
That's it.
and telling their sons and teaching their sons what it means to be a man.
That's it.
Because sometimes people think what it means to be a man is to be a fighter and just to be aggressive and mean and tough and a bully.
Yeah.
And which leads to violence at times
It
when you
does.
don't know how to treat people in your society and in your
Yes.
in your group.
That's correct. Yeah. And in your home.
In your home, right.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is how to treat women.
That's correct.
How to treat women, because you spoke about one of the first acts of violence in your family was
Yes.
Against
My sister.
your sister.
Yes.
Her husband murdered her.
Yes, that's correct.
You see, so something happened there where
Yes.
some failure happened there
Yes.
in that man that did not know how to. One thing you said, she caught him cheating.
Yes.
So he was a cheater. That's
Yes.
one thing. So dad had already told him, said, "Son, don't be a cheater."
Don't be a cheater. Yes.
And then treat women right.
That's right.
And so some of this is fathers raising sons.
Yes.
And then also, helping these daughters as well.
Yes.
But I do believe that one of the roles that's missing is the father. is the
Fathers in the
man.
home.
And part of the society has
Yes.
actually diminished the role of the man.
That's correct, and it continues at an alarming high rate right now, and that's one of the things that I promote. I'm real big, so I have like actively 160 kids all over the world, and I do them from all different cultures because I try to understand in different cultures what is happening within their home. Is there two parent people, mother, father in the home, or is it just a father? What are their consequences and things of that nature? But I have learned that only in this society in the United States is where we have the most violence. One parent, moms raising just the kids, and then I'm telling you, like some of them young men on there is like, well, who I'm supposed to follow behind? The streets are raising me. That's the only person that come to my rescue, and so it's a hard battle because as being a woman, I can't tell a young man how to be a man. I don't have that, but I do try to find good role models, to step in and be that father to him. Like on Father's Day, we have events. I have like an event at the park where we'll get all these different fathers and we'll bring them to the park. And those kids that do not have a father have an opportunity. They get to play basketball, football. We just pair them up, and they kind of tend to try to check back and forth on them. And then I had got a good rapport. There's a young man, his grandmother's actively raising him. Father was murdered, mom is incarcerated, grandmother's raising him. And so when he went to the store, instead of him, just asking for what he needed, he went to steal. And so it was a good thing that I had my organization the way that I did. The lady was able to call me, let me know. I didn't go. I called the mentor, which is a male, and allow him to go up there and get him. Of course, they didn't. We try to work with the people in the community so they don't go to jail. But he was able to take him, and now this young man has tremendously turned his life around.
Yes.
Because he has this male role model, and he walks in the standards of doing right because this young man is watching him, not just one but several young men, and it has tremendously changed his life around.
Yes, yes. People have tried to diminish the role of men.
They have.
But that's what's needed.
Yes.
Men should step forward.
Yes.
And be appropriate men.
Yes.
And be what God intended for the man to be.
Yes.
And we can actually see a difference in our communities if
Yes.
the men would to step forward
yes.
in the proper showing a pattern of good works.
Good works,
So
yes.
that the young can follow a pattern of
Yes.
good works. And almost everything needs a pattern.
That's correct.
And so these young men that are coming along, they need a pattern of good works.
That's
And
right.
sometimes they're seeing the wrong pattern.
Pattern, yes.
They found a pattern, but it's not the right one.
That's right.
And we need to show the right pattern.
Yes, yes. And can I say something also?
Come on.
I know people might not like this. Some women, and I'm not going to say all, they have to step back and let these men be men. They have to get out the way. I'm just being honest because I see it so much, and I tell them all the time, the man won't be with you, but don't stop that man from being a father to his child. And a lot of women are in the way and pushing these men back, and they have to get back on that throne of knowing their place.
And here's a corruption. Here's a corruption in the minds of some women. Some women think that they can do what a man can do. That's a corruption.
That is not so.
That's not true.
That's not the
That's
truth.
not true. And I'm going to give credit to my mother for raising us well. Yes. But my mother was not my father.
Yes, that's correct.
My mother was not my father.
Yes.
And there were some things my mother just could not do for me because she was a woman.
Yes.
And a woman cannot be a man.
Not at all. We cannot.
It's a corruption in the world.
That's
they try to act like it's just all the same.
It's not.
And you know what else is a shame? That we, as a society, not me and you, because I think we got some sense.
Yes.
Try to compare men to women and women to men, when actually there's a value of a woman that a man cannot meet.
That's
and there's a
right.
value of a man
that
a woman cannot meet.
Not at all.
They are different.
Exactly.
And you should not compare apples to oranges, nor should you compare a man to a woman. Which one is better? That's a foolish comparison.
Because
there's some things a woman can do that a man just can't do. value,
Yep.
and vice versa.
That's true.
The
Yes.
value is in both.
That's right.
But there are some things that you cannot replace that man with.
That's correct. There's a lot of things.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
So we need to get back to putting the right value in men.
Men.
Fathers
Correct.
should raise their sons and daughters.
That is true. I'm
And
in full agreement.
and I know we're talking about gun violence, but I see it being related.
That's a solution.
Yes.
That is a great solution. That is
Yes.
a needed solution.
Yes. And fathers, bring your children to church.
That's it. 'Cause
And bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord.
That's right.
And now we've stopped them from going to jail.
Exactly.
We've stopped them from picking up guns and trying to handle their problems with a gun.
That's right.
We've brought about a solution that does not involve retaliation.
Exactly.
We've brought about peace. We've brought about love. It's taughting you to love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor. Yes, Lord. Yes.
You see.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's one of the things that we should push for, because I went to this one church I went to visit while I was in Akron, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And there it was more so I seen a lot of males going to the schools. Sunday morning, I see more males going to church with their children. Didn't see a lot of moms, but I've seen a lot of males with their children and raising their children there.
Yes.
And it was a big thing. My friend, she did a podcast on it, was interviewing them and asking them the things. And a lot of them was just like the women wants to do their own thing. You know, they want the money, they want this, and they don't have time for the children. And some of the men had been traumatized when they were little, and they was just like, I don't want to see the cycle continue.
Mm-hmm.
And they were stepping up to the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that was in Akron, Ohio.
Yes.
It was a blessing. I said, well, I don't get to see much of this in Atlanta, but it would be nice.
Yeah, come on, Atlanta. Let's step up, Atlanta.
Yes.
And other communities.
Yes.
We want to see.
Yes, globally.
Yes, we do want to see it worldwide.
Yes.
And another thing is, I would say this. I know that we were talking about gun violence in the black community.
Yes.
We really don't want to see that in any community.
Any community, yes.
You've just experienced a concentrated amount of it.
Yes. Too much.
Too
Yeah.
much.
Too much.
And we need to get this out of our community.
Yes.
And the best way is the way of God.
Yes.
The way of love.
Yes.
If legislation can solve the issue, let's get that. But I believe that God is
think
the
God
problem
is
solver.
that's
He's
the
the
answer.
problem solver.
He's the answer.
Yes, yes.
That's
Are
the
there any
answer.
other things that you've advocated for?
Homelessness.
Yeah.
Because I had a situation where just not too long ago, I moved to a apartment complex on Hollywood Road, brand new apartments. It's been all over the news, Hollywood Reserves. I had moved there, and some young men, I can't think of the name of it, something EFI or something like that, bringing up, and I'm not in no agreement with that. They actually lived across the hall from me.
What's
And so,
E5? What?
I don't know, it's some kind of supposed to be religion or something that the young people are doing now.
Oh, okay.
And so these particular young men, and I don't know them, I came home and just some nights you're seeing sheets on the ground, people's bodies. I have seen people down the hallway, dead bodies rolled out on gurneys. And so they couldn't get to the bottom of it. And so finally they had said that if anybody turned in a ring cam, they were going to kill them. And I come home and my neighbor, son, dead on the ground under a sheet. And at that point, couple nights later, about 3 or 4 nights later, I was getting off from work, coming home, and got off the elevator to be greeted by the Atlanta SWAT team. Thrown on the ground, treated unfairly, made me get up when I told them what apartment I was in, walked me down the hallway, only to find out that directly across the hall were the killers. I was in 320, they lived across the hall in 321. Unfortunately, they went there, they weren't there. And so at that point, I got up out of there. I had to move because they were saying that my Ring camera captured almost everything. I'm at work, so
Uh-huh.
I don't watch it. As long as nobody's not breaking in my house, I don't go back and look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the police asked for my Ring camera. I had to give it up, and I told the lady, she said, we're gonna, for your safety, violence against women, and we're gonna allow you to move.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to move, and because at the time I was still battling my cancer and my heart failure, I didn't work the hours. So that left me homeless without nowhere to go. And so, people don't understand that is some of the things that lead to homelessness. And so I just went to Washington, D.C. to advocate with the Poor People's Campaign, which is Martin Luther King's nonprofit. And so I was able to go to Washington, D.C. and be one of the speakers to speak out about the Poor People's Campaign and some of the things that are causing some of the homeless issues within our community right here in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I advocate for domestic violence. I advocate for teen dating violence. I have a big, huge event every year that I do. I bring in all kind of teens and young adults into the room, and I bring in powerful speakers like men that have been victims of domestic violence, because some young people don't think men are victims of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think that these women are out here abusing and doing men wrong also. So I had to bring it a little bit on both sides, but also bring in strong people who came with resolution and solution, not about retaliation, but being able to have to, love that person, advocate for them to get some services and help and things of that nature to combat those things.
Well, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
so I
You
do a
know,
lot.
Well, it's nice to meet you today.
Nice to meet you too.
I think our
Yes.
audience
Yes.
probably feel good having you had this conversation with us.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for having me.
Melveenia
Clark. Yes,
Melveenia
sir.
Clark. And
Yes.
it's nice to meet you
Nice
today.
to meet you
and
too.
enjoyed talking with you.
I enjoyed talking with you too.
And it seems like you believe in some of the same principles that I teach.
Yes, yes.
That the scriptures teach, really.
Yes,
And so
yes.
that's refreshing.
Yes.
To meet somebody like you.
Yes, that was my healing too. That's what got me here with the smile on my face and good health, good heart. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's fun. It's nice to meet somebody who actually believes that forgiveness is for you
Yes.
and not the other person.
That is correct.
The other people or whoever.
Yes.
It's for you. And unforgiveness can have a physical manifestation.
Ooh, yes, sir.
And
Yes.
so I'm glad that God has helped you to heal.
Yes, yes,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
And I hope I've said something that will touch the hearts and minds of others and move them towards looking internally
Mm-hmm.
and getting right within so that we can spread this thing like a wildfire to heal other people.
Yes, yes. Gun violence is a real thing.
Yes.
And it's not only in the black community, it's all over the world.
It's all over the world.
But it's disproportionate in the black community.
Yes.
And we would like to see some change.
Yes.
But a lot of this change may not come from legislation. It may
Yes.
not come from who's in the White House.
That's correct.
It may come from who's in your house. And perhaps if we could begin to set our houses in order.
That's it.
With proper raising of our children, bringing them to the house of God.
Yes.
And really motivating the role of fathers.
That's correct.
We really can come to a better place. And so I'm glad to have this conversation. And I hope that you've received something from this conversation. This is the Growing in Grace podcast. If you have any question or concern or would like to hear other topics discussed, please email us at ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. Again, ltgigpodcast@gmail.com. I hope this has been a blessing to you, and we hope to have you come back again for the next podcast. Come on back.